Take it away.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Deonisis. I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. Thank you to Kevin for your service. Thank you to Terry, who I know personally here from the Bronx meetings I go to. My home group is Bailey Avenue, Big Book North. We meet on Friday nights and we discuss the Big Book. We review the literature, we read the literature, and we share about our experiences in recovery and just in our current life as they pertain to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I say all these things because that is the only thing that was successful in allowing me and assisting me in helping me break free from active alcoholism and active drug addiction. I've never spoken at a CA meeting before. I've listened to a bunch of speaker tapes around CA, and just never. I think I've gone to a couple of NA meetings. I just never got myself to a CA meeting, and I find that super surprising because I was a major cocaine addict actually. So I feel really grateful and humbled to be here. I think part of the talk, part of the qualification is there's going to be a lot of there might be a little bit of like stories just around my cocaine use, simply because I never really got to talk about a lot of the things that I did surrounding cocaine in AA, because I respect Alcoholics Anonymous. I respect the fact that 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 alcoholics identify best with alcoholics. And although alcohol and cocaine are like coffee and a donut to most alcoholics, if they like coffee and donuts, if they like cocaine and alcohol, but many people don't. And so I'm excited to be able to share a little bit about that, to be able to connect with people on that level. Uh, Again, my name is Dionysus. I'm a recovered drug addict. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And I'm just a human being trying to grow spiritually and trying to find peace on a daily basis. Today, I've been running around. I'm in my car. I just got done with an unsuccessful day of errands. I'm trying to get my car inspected, right? And it's like not passing. And I may be free from cocaine. I may be free from alcohol for coming up on 11 years. But I'm going to tell you guys something. I am not free from restlessness, irritability, and discontent at all. I have been having such a crummy day. And what's the beautiful part about this right here, right now moment is that I know what's wrong with me. I know that I am the source of all of my troubles, that I am at the root of all my troubles, and that my mind, all of my troubles center in my mind. For some reason, I can't wrap my head around the fact that I am healthy, that I'm alive, that I've got a really nice life, that I got a really nice home, that I recently got married, I have a stable and secure job that I'm good at and I'm passionate at. I normally work on Saturdays and I didn't work because there's an imminent snowstorm. And I was like, oh, let me go get this task done. And just because it didn't go my way, I am just having the worst day ever. And if I allow myself, I'll take it out on my wife, I'll take it out on like random strangers. And so I'm so fortunate just to be here to explain really what is the root cause of our problem, which is essentially our restless, the spiritual malady of the disease of addiction and the disease of alcoholism. So that's just like a lead in to like where I'm at in my headspace right now. And it's also an acknowledgement that we still, the word is still suffer, at least for me. I still suffer from many, many, many of the same symptoms, right? The causes and the conditions of my addiction, of my alcoholism, of my cocaine use. But I no longer use, right? And so let's talk about what my life was like. Let's talk about what happened, and let's talk a little bit about my life, what my life is like now. And I mentioned a couple of things about what my life is like now. I have no reason to be so irritable, yet I still get like bogged down in this. And so again, I want to put that out there for anyone who still feels this way, that it's super normal, that we don't have to come to every single meeting and show up to every single day like a beaming rainbow of sunlight, because that's just not the case for all of us all the time. And so that's a beautiful thing. So what was my life like? My life and my drug addiction really started in like my teenage years. It actually kind of started with alcohol and marijuana, and I didn't start to use cocaine until like really kind of late in my 20s. There's a crazy irony about my whole life and my addiction is that somewhere in college, I started working for a drug delivery service. I started working for a weed service here in New York City before like it was like semi-legal and they're like selling it in shops and it's just like nobody's getting busted anymore. There were all of these services where you would page a number, an operator would call you back, they would get your information, and then I was what's known as like a runner. And I would get the phone calls in the early days of cell phone use, and I would have a little notepad and I would write down all these clients' names and addresses. And I would have a section of Manhattan where I would go and I would just kind of be around with a backpack of like marijuana, cocaine, ecstasy, and anything else that kind of was like loose on the market like that week. But those three were always present. And, I was just really strictly with alcohol and marijuana, and I was always around cocaine. And I never touched it. I just never got really like too into it. I think I had tasted it a couple of times, put it on my lips a few times, got that like freezy numb feeling a few times. Maybe once or twice I sniffed it and it made me kind of like gaggy and nauseous. But I I excuse me, I'm sorry. Apologize for that mishap. This is what happens when you kind of do it from a cell phone in the car. I pressed the button and I was gone. So I was saying, like, I used to sell cocaine. I worked for a drug delivery service, and I had cocaine all the time, and I never used cocaine. And and I tasted it a couple of times. I maybe did like a little bit here and there, maybe a little nauseous. I didn't like the way that it affected like my mouth, my nose, my stomach. I don't know. I never got into it. And but somehow like later on after I had like moved on past that portion of my life and and stopped working for that service, I started hanging out with a group of people I started drinking with a couple of people who were really into cocaine. And I just, one day, like I was like in this particular moment where like I had enough to drink and I had like enough to snort that it was like, boom, wow. Like, oh, this is what these people were talking about. Now I understand. And so my cocaine use started much, much later. It started many, many, many years after my alcohol. And really what cocaine did, and perhaps you can identify with something like this, is that it prolonged my drinking for a really long time. Because, as I would hear in the rooms as well, that it just allowed me to drink for longer periods and allowed me to stay like more alert. Um, Cocaine became really devastating for me and my drinking. I was married at the time. Uh, I would I would hide cocaine all over my home. I would hide it in. I remember I would hide little packets of cocaine and a straw in planters. Like I would hide them above bookcases. I would hide it in my bathroom robe. I would hide it in like cans, like cleaning material underneath the kitchen sink. I would have cocaine hidden all over the house similar to how I would have alcohol hidden all over the house because my wife then would constantly find it. I remember that I was suffering medically from my disease, from alcoholism and from massive amounts of cocaine use by that point. That my eyes were bugging out of my head. My thyroid was completely whacked out. I was going to an endocrinologist, and they had diagnosed me with autoimmune disease, and I kept my drug addiction and my alcohol addiction so secret, and just pretended like everything was okay. Um, I recall, I can recall going to the the ATM machine, and in classic addiction style, not having any money, but spending whatever money I had on alcohol and cocaine, and going to the ATM machine and putting in that ATM card, and just praying that I would hear that sound of the money kind of being counted, like that sound. And if I heard that sound, my whole demeanor would brighten, and I would immediately take that money and I would go over to the drug spot, and I would go into this guy's house and I would crush it up and I would do a hit. And then I remember, and I want to be fully transparent here, like I would like put this cocaine like up my buttocks, because I was like half thinking that I was smart, but I was so paranoid by a certain point of like walking around in these neighborhoods where I was buying drugs, that I didn't want to get arrested, but I wasn't willing to like not take these chances. So, I can recall I was a school teacher, and I can recall doing cocaine very early on in like the bathroom, because I would be so hungover that that's what I would do just to kind of make it through the day. So, you know, that's just a little bit of a drunkalog, or a drugalog, if you will. And I'm sure there were many, many more instances, but I was medically ill, I was spiritually ill, I was mentally very, very, very sick, and I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. My life uh, was consumed by getting the drug, doing the drug, drinking, lying about the amount that I was drinking, lying about the amount that I was doing, and thinking that it was completely normal. That's like in a nutshell, like what it was like, right? That's what it feels like to be gripped in active addiction. The next thing is like what happens to us, right? Because I I loved drinking alone. I loved drugging alone. Yeah, I would hang out with people, but cocaine's expensive. It didn't take long for me to become pretty selfish and greedy with cocaine, that like I didn't share it with anybody, right? So like I would go to parties, and I would do cocaine by myself in the bathroom, which is pretty standard fare. But I felt like it was a little bit more serious, because I would be at parties or whatever gatherings where people were doing cocaine, but I was like doing it by myself, right? And so that's something that's kind of intense as well. Uh, and so the things that happened to me is that life just kind of came to a crashing halt, right? That's something that happened. And I was kicked out of my home. I was facing this divorce. I was sick and suffering. I was medically very ill. I was suicidal. I was in complete despair. I was lying to myself. I was restless, irritable, and discontent, plus drug addict, plus alcoholic. And God came, right? And God gave me the grace and the space to make an effort to take a step towards sobriety. And that comes in the form of the steps. And that's where we get to when we get to this place where we ask ourselves, like, well, what is it that happened? And what happened is that I found, or God had sent me an angel, right, in the form of an AA sponsor who's armed with the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, is armed with the facts, who carries a message of depth and weight, and who gently, kindly, prayerfully, and thoroughly, and very like matter of fact, guides me through the steps of AA. The thing about recovery is that this is from my perspective, is that we kind of have it does tell us that most of us have to be pretty badly mangled up until we're into a state of reasonableness, until we're willing to even accept a program of action, right? That we have to come to a place in a space of hopelessness in order for this thing to even work. And so I hope that I was able to, not completely bore you with maybe some of the same details that you've gone on, which, by the way, don't scare people away from drugs and alcohol, but it only allows us to identify with one another to kind of qualify the person as an individual who knows what they're talking about. And so I began working the steps out of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, step one tells us that we are to admit that we're powerless over alcohol and our lives are unmanageable. There's no action in that step. It's really just like a thought. And everything that I described, the sticking coke, like hiding cocaine up your ass, spending all of your money on it, hiding it all around your house. These are just like symptoms, right? They're symptoms, as our book tells us, but they're real. They're real indicators of powerlessness to not do this thing, and an unmanageability of my life. Right? I was somehow able to kind of hold together portions of a relationship, parts of a job, but eventually everything kind of came crashing down. And so that's like my step one experience. I get kicked out of my house. I'm living on my friend's couch. I'm kind of couch surfing between my mom and my friend's place. My then wife is divorcing me, and I have a choice here. I either try to do this thing that someone's willing to help me, or I continue down this path of self-destruction and death. Step two is like we come to believe that there's a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. And for me, that step two experience was the people in the meetings, really. It was people who were honest enough to say things like hiding cocaine up their ass and sniffing cocaine in the teacher's bathroom. Like who and trying to kill their wife and then kill themselves and end up in psychiatric units. Normal people, one, like, don't have that much, probably may not have that much creativity to make stuff like that up, because it's pretty unique details. And also, people who haven't been through that are not willing to share that type of experience with others, with complete strangers on a Zoom call that's being recorded, that could get me in trouble potentially. But in fact, the reality is that I'm so proud of my past, right? It tells us that our dark past becomes our greatest asset, that it's like, yeah, absolutely, this was me, right? This was, of course, my life. And by the grace of God, right, and the power of this divine czar of the universe, it's no longer me, that I've been recreated and reborn. And that leads us to step three, which is like what's step three? It says that's like I'm going to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. And so that asked me to, one, begin a life of prayer, and that prayer had already begun. Every time, I told you, I went to the cocaine spot, I sniffed, I crushed it, I sniffed the line, I stuck it up my ass, and I prayed I didn't get caught. Right? That's a prayer. When I went to that ATM machine and I put that card in, and I prayed I would hear that money would come out. Okay? When I'm drinking and coked up and driving my car home, I prayed I wouldn't get caught and arrested. So I knew how to pray. I knew that there was something that was keeping me alive. Like when my eyes were bulging out of my head with hyperthyroidism, and I was getting my thyroid ablated and keeping these things a secret from the doctors of like what my life really is like, the amount of alcohol that I guzzle with antidepressants that I would tell the psychiatrist, I don't feel good. I don't know what's wrong with me, right? And so so turning my life and my will over to a power greater than myself and beginning to pray, which is just, the big book uses the word ask over and over. It's just to ask for the strength to stay away from a drink and a drug for today, and to say thank you for not having a drink and a drug today, was what my third step really was like. Uh, as I'm speaking, I pray today that my restless irritability and discontentment goes away, and that my true heart and nature comes across to everyone I encounter, and that I count my blessings, because my blessings are like tremendously large. Step four is this experience where we're asked to do a searching and fearless and moral inventory of ourselves. I spoke on step four at an in-person meeting here in the Bronx recently, and this is what I shared with them. I said, step four allows me to look at patterns in my life around these things around resentments, fears, and harms, where I get to look for how and where I play a part in my own misery, in my own troubles, how I step on the toes of others. But in real plain language, step four cleans my brain. It washes my brain of old patterns of thinking that lended itself to intense levels of drinking and drugging. Pause here for a second. If you're like brand new to recovery, alcoholism, drug addiction are generally two-part, and I really like to push this three-part disease where it's physical, it's mental, but it's also spiritual. Okay? And so the fourth step, this inventory, asks us to just become more aware of the things that kind of irritate us, asks us to identify how they irritate, or the harm that we do, or the things that we're fearful, or the people we resent. It asks us to go a little bit deeper and say what parts of ourself are deeply and uniquely affected. But the last part of a fourth step inventory in any 12-step recovery program is to ask yourself, what's my part in this? Where did I go wrong? What am I doing that's keeping me stuck? That's keeping me stuck in bondage. And this is recovery speak here, because I'm a slave to myself. Nobody makes me feel the way that I make myself feel. So step five, right? What does it say in the book here? It says, admit it to God, ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrong. So step five is really not going over every single bad thing or evil thing or person you hate or harm that you did, sexual or otherwise. It's really just looking at the pattern, And I said it earlier. I said, when things don't go my way, because I think I'm the controller, the director, the principal, I think I'm God, I think the world revolves around me. When things don't go my way, I make everybody's life miserable. When I want people to like me so much that I often overdo it to the point that they don't like me. These are two things that I took away from my fourth step. And by this point in recovery, friends, we're not even thinking about the cocaine that I sniff, the 8 balls that I buy left, right, and center, the gallons of vodka that I'm guzzling with antidepressant medicine. We're thinking about our thinking here. And but if you're doing it and you're under the grace of God and you're under the guidance of an individual who's guiding you through the big book of AA, you're going to feel a sense of power and purpose and direction towards this psychic change that you kind of stop thinking about drugs and alcohol. And therein lies this beautiful mystery of recovery, is that addiction, alcoholism, has everything to do with drugs and alcohol and has almost nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. This is why I said, I was like, yo, I'm having like the worst day all by myself. Like, all by myself, man. Like, so, you know, I still suffer. I'm seeking that daily reprieve. And I want to thank you all for helping me find it, because, this was a gift given to me. And if I don't like practice it and share this, I'll get stuck in self. What's step 6 say? It says, we are entirely ready to have God remove my defects of character. So step 4, I get an idea of what my defects are. I get an idea of where the patterns of behavior that cause me harm and cause harm to others is. In step 5, I admit what those are. I ask somebody else to hold me accountable, but more importantly, I admit it to God, but God already knew. God just wants you to step up to the plate. He's like, yo, I made you perfect. You went very far. I never destined you to walk across Dykeman Street every day to go buy an 8-ball. Nobody, I didn't, that wasn't my plan for you. But you took it into your own hands, and that's where you went with this. But if you're willing to come back, I'm here for you. Right? And so step 6 is like, okay, God, I'm selfish. I'm self-centered. I'm moody. I want things my way. I think that if everybody would listen to my plan, all would go well, right? Like, so God, take these things away from me, please. Take them away, because I have more to give. And that's what number 7 says. 7 says, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. So it's like this 4, 5, 6, 7 thing happens really quickly, man. It's all about the identification of what's going wrong in your life and admitting it, and then recognizing the power that's gotten you this far that can keep on getting you further. Because again, 11 years, close to 11 years away from a drink and a drug, I still feel restless, irritable, and discontent. But I no longer feel compelled to go drink and drug. It's something that has been, as our program promises us, removed. 8, it says, made a list of persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them. Okay. What happened to me in my life is that I became aware of the people, the principles, and the institutions for which I had resentments against, for which I had fear of, and for whom or places that I caused harm at. I didn't have to do much, because if you do this fearless and thorough, fact-facing inventory, it's kind of done for you. So, I had resentments, for example, against my mom. I had a resentment against my ex-wife. I had a resentment against Hunter College because, they kicked me out of college. No, I was a complete burnout. Like, I just dropped out and then blamed them for it somehow in my brain. I blamed principles such as poverty. Like, oh, why wasn't I like wealthy? Like, maybe my wife would be better. Okay. So I made a list, and I became willing to make amends to these people. I could go on for a long time about that type of stuff, but it's not necessary. These are processes that help us free ourselves from active drinking and drugging. Number 9 tells us that we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when they would do harm. Okay, so this is a process of getting right with other people, of a new person, right? A new Dionysus owning up to being honest. Right? It tells us in our program that honesty, willingness, and open-mindedness are the like essentials of recovery. Again, it doesn't say willpower, grit, determination, calling your sponsor, having a gratitude list, like walking on the other side of the street from a liquor store, never crossing the same block where you bought Coke anymore. Like, it doesn't say these types of things. It says honesty, willingness, open mindedness to what? To a power greater than yourself, which can restore you to sanity. That's where this comes from. But and that power who created all of us, right? Every man, woman, and child, fundamental idea of God. We're all children of this God. And so in 9, we're expected to ask for forgiveness for the wrongs that we've done. That's the amends process. And what I learned, and I gotta tell you, like, I was that drunk, drugged up teacher who got fired. I'm an assistant principal today. I'm hoping and I'm praying to God that I become a principal soon. Please pray for me. I put a proposal in for a brand new school. You know, like, and God put this idea in my heart, in my head, and I was able to put it on paper. And like, this is, and if it doesn't happen, that'll be cool too. But I know that God has got big things for me. And so just the other day, I'm coaching a kid on the difference between saying sorry and asking for forgiveness. I'm coaching a 10th grader. The little stupid stuff. One 10th grader pulls another 10th grader's pants down. 10th grade boys are pretty strong. These kids were like at each other's necks at the lockers, and I had to break them up. And, they were friends and we're talking to them. And my point is this: the one kid who pulled the other kid's pants down, knucklehead. I coached him on saying, "Hey man, this is your buddy. I need you to say sorry. I need you to acknowledge what you did. I need you to acknowledge how it made him feel, and then I need you to ask for forgiveness." And then I remember telling him about what I was taught, that sorry is a sorry word. I told him, right, in my honesty, I told him that, my wife, every time I say I'm sorry, you know what she does? And the 10th graders got a kick out of this. You probably got a kick out of this too. She goes into the chat and she searches the phrase sorry, and she sends me screenshots of how many times I've said it. Boom, 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 boom. What she's saying is, sorry is a sorry word, sucker. Right? And so, you know, 9th step, I'm taught to ask others for forgiveness for the harms that I've done, with the intention and the hope and the meaning of not doing them again. 10th step asks us to take personal inventory, and then when we're wrong, promptly admitted it. Essentially, 3 through 9 is the program of like recovery. 10 is like repeating these steps over and over on this like internal basis of saying, how am I living my life? Am I living it with honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love? Can I check my actions, my thoughts, my words, my deeds along those lines of love, of kindness, of humility? Listen, real quick, we're not saints. What does it tell us? That we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. But a lot of people out here, they don't speak this way. They don't think this way. And so we are, in fact, even like, I'll go as far as to say it's like, actually, I mean, the book calls us miracles of mental health, or just miracles in general. The age of miracles is still with us. Like, we are God's chosen, man. Like, God used the book of AA to get to us specifically so that we can do his work. And that's essentially what a 10th step is. It's like all the time I'm thinking about like, like what am I doing? How are my actions affecting me? And like, if there's problems, what parts am I playing in them? Step 10 told me that I needed to seek through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God, right? Praying only for his will and the power to carry that out. And that just really means that like I am to grow, grow, grow. And we grow by being honest. We grow by saying, look, man, I'm like a really less than perfect human being who had a bad day because he couldn't get his car inspected, like, and is willing to kind of mess things up for other people because I'm not getting my way. Please, God, forgive me for this. God, take this part of me away. And but what we also learn in recovery, what happened to me is that I learned that I can't just ask for bad stuff to be taken away. We have to ask for the opposite, positive or good, to be added. So all of us have seen, on social media, the dark cup, the dark liquid underneath the faucet, and then the clear water gets poured into the dark cup. And it takes time for that clear, pure, good water to expel the dark. And that's what that is. We can't take out the dark, we can only add the good. And that's why we're asked to continuously seek his will, prayer and meditation. And then the last part is like to spread this message, right? Having had this spiritual awakening, and so that's what like happened to me. And today I shared a little bit about what my life is like. My life's pretty damn good, and I really have nothing to complain about. But yet I still do. I will still find ways to allow, and I'll just use this term, the enemy in. The schemes and the lies of the enemy can easily crop in at all times. But if we are armed, you know, with I will make allusions to other spiritual literature that I've really gotten into. I've really gotten into my own Christian faith. The other big book, right, talks about like the helmet and the breastplate and the sword and the girdle and the shield and the boots. Like we've got to be armed up for a spiritual battle because we're spiritually awakened and aware human beings. And so that's what happened to me. And in that journey, I stopped sniffing coke. I stopped smoking weed. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I stopped drinking alcohol. It just went away, and it never came back. What I suffer from today is anger. Anger is the thing that I fear the most. And I pray that God, keeps me free from anger because I know that anger is a lie, and that anger is what is it, it's one of the threads of fear, which is this evil and corroding thread that weaves in and out of my life. So, like Bill Wilson said, alcohol was my master, but cocaine was a pretty quick runner up. Yeah, there we go. I love it. Anger it's a dubious luxury. Like I can't afford it. Thank you for that, Kevin. I can't afford it. So I hope that I was able to convey what my life is like, what happened to me, what my life is like now. And I'm ready to hear from you guys. Thank you all.